Okay, let's unpack this. OpenAI has just launched Codex, and if you're someone who works with code, this sounds like it could be a real game changer.
It does. They're talking about an AI that's not just like helping out, but acting like a virtual teammate, always there.
A virtual teammate, exactly. What's really significant here, I think, is how AI is being applied now. It feels like a shift.
Definitely a shift. We seem to be moving past simple tools, assistance, towards something more collaborative, even autonomous.
Yeah, autonomous is a good word for it. So for this deep dive, we're going all in on OpenAI's Codex. We've pulled together info from articles, devox.com, TechCrunch.
Right, those are key. And also insights from Matthew Berman and David Andrej from their YouTube discussions.
Exactly. So we've got a mix of sources, official announcements, but also some real hands-on takes from developers using it.
Which gives us a pretty rounded view, hopefully.
And that's the plan for you today. We want to really boil down what Codex is, how it works, where it's being used already, and importantly, what it might mean for how software gets made.
Sort of a shortcut to get you up to speed without drowning in, all the super technical jargon.
Right. We think there's some surprising bits in here and definitely some practical things to think about.
Okay, so let's start with the basics then. What is Codex really at its core?
Well, based on the sources, it's a cloud-based agent, specifically for software engineering, launched by OpenAI.
Right, cloud-based. And DevOps.com and TechCrunch both point out it's powered by something called Codex 1.
Yeah, Codex 1, which is apparently a specialized version of their O3 model. Think of O3 as like the big foundation model.
And Codex 1 is the version fine-tuned just for coding tasks?
Exactly. That specialization seems really important. It's not just a general AI trying to code. It's been specifically trained for it.
Which suggests a deeper understanding of, the nuances of development.
Totally. And it's definitely positioned as more than just fancy autocomplete.
Oh, yeah, way beyond that.
DevOps.com calls it a collaborative partner. It can apparently take on entire tasks independently.
So it's not just suggesting the next word or line.
No, it's potentially building features, fixing bugs, that sort of thing, on its own.
That feels like a step towards those more autonomous agents we were talking about, rather than just tools helping out.
Mm-hmm. And it can handle multiple things at once. That came up in several sources.
Yeah, DevOps.com, Berman, Andrej, they all mention that. Running multiple tasks at the same time, each in its own isolated cloud environment.
Which sounds like a fundamental change in workflow, right?
Absolutely. And those environments are preloaded with the developer's own code repository.
So it has context right away.
Yeah.
That's smart. All the sources seem to highlight that.
And the GitHub integration, too. That was mentioned by Berman, Andrej, TechCrunch.
Crucial for actually fitting into how people work already. You don't want to have to change everything just to use a new tool.
Exactly. Seamless integration is key for adoption.
Okay, so let's dig into the mechanics. How does a developer actually, interact with this thing?
Well, the descriptions from DevOps.com, TechCrunch, Andrej suggest it's right inside ChatGPT.
Okay, so familiar interface.
Yeah, apparently there are specific code and ask buttons, so you can either give it a task using a prompt or just ask questions about your code.
And it works asynchronously. That's what DevOps.com, Berman, and Andrej seem to emphasize.
Right. You don't have to sit there and wait for it to finish one thing. You can delegate several tasks.
And they just run in the background.
Yeah.
While you do other stuff.
Pretty much. It works on them in parallel. That's a big departure from tools that need constant babysitting.
Yeah, that asynchronous part sounds really powerful for productivity.
Definitely changes the workflow dynamic. Allows developers to focus elsewhere while Codex crunches away.
And what can it actually do inside that environment? DevOps.com mentions specifics.
It can read files, obviously, but also edit them. And it can run commands.
Like what kind of commands?
Things like running your test suites or linters the tools that check code style and quality.
Ah, okay. So it's not just generating code blindly. It can actually check its own work, essentially.
Exactly. It can test the code it writes, make sure it meets standards, which is what makes it feel more like an actual agent.
And the time it takes. The sources mentioned a range.
Yeah, typically between 1 and 30 minutes per task, according to DevOps.com, Berman, and TechCrunch.
So not just tiny tweaks then.
Yeah.
It can handle reasonably chunky bits of work.
Seems like it. And another key thing DevOps.com highlighted was transparency.
How so?
It provides proof of what it did. You get terminal logs, test outputs, verifiable evidence.
Oh, that's good. So you're not just getting a block of code back. You can see the process.
Precisely. You can see how it arrived at the solution, what tests it ran, if they passed or failed.
That builds trust, I guess.
Uh-huh.
You need to be able to understand what the AI did, especially if you're going to merge that code.
Absolutely essential. That audit trail is critical.
Okay, so we have a handle on what it is and roughly how it works. But what about the tech behind Codex 1? What makes it tick?
Well, as we said, it's optimized for coding, and the training method, reinforcement learning, is key. That came up in DevOps.com, Berman, TechCrunch.
Reinforcement learning. So it learns from trying things out and getting feedback.
Kind of, yeah. It learned by processing tons of real-world coding tasks, seeing what worked, what didn't, and getting better over time.
And it's not just about functionality, is it? DevOps.com mentioned something about style.
Right. Apparently, it can learn to mimic human coding styles, even pick up on preferences from pull requests.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty nuanced. Understanding not just what the code does, but how it should look and feel within a specific project.
It suggests a level of understanding beyond just syntax, yeah. Getting into conventions, best practices.
And DevOps.com and TechCrunch also mentioned its precision and how it runs tests iteratively.
Yeah, it sticks closely to instructions and keeps running tests until they pass, which points towards reliability, making sure the code is actually correct.
And apparently it performs well right away, without loads of tweaking.
That's what DevOps.com suggested. Strong performance on coding benchmarks straight out of the gate.
Pretty impressive for a new model.
It really speaks to how effective that specialized training was. But, theory is one thing. What about real-world use? Who's actually using this already?
Yeah, good question. The sources gave some really interesting examples. DevOps.com listed quite a few early adopters.
Like who?
Well, for starters, OpenAI themselves. They're using it internally.
Eating their own dog food, so to speak.
Exactly. Using it for stuff like refactoring, writing tests, those repetitive tasks that can break your flow. If the creators are using it, that says something.
It's definitely a strong endorsement. Who else?
Cisco is apparently exploring it to speed up some of their bigger, more ambitious projects.
Okay, large-scale stuff.
And Temporal is using it across the board, building features, debugging, testing, even major refactoring.
Wow, so really integrating it deeply into their development cycle.
Seems like it. And it's not just huge companies. Superhuman is using it for smaller routine tasks.
Right.
And interestingly, they mentioned it lets their product managers make small code changes sometimes without needing an engineer.
Huh. That's an interesting side effect. Frees up engineering time, maybe?
Potentially. And Kodiak, they do autonomous driving tech.
High-stakes stuff.
Yeah. They're using Codex for debugging their tools, improving test coverage, and refactoring critical code.
Using it for safety-critical systems. That really shows a level of trust or at least exploration in that area.
But maybe the most grounded perspective came from David Andreja's video.
Ah, yeah, his hands-on experience.
He talked about using it at his company, Vectel. They have a live production code base, 50,000 users.
Okay, so proper real-world testing, what did he use it for?
Things like getting Codex to explain parts of their code base, finding bugs, improving their search feature. It gives a real sense of how it works on an actual complex system.
That kind of direct user feedback is gold. It tells you what it's really like, warts and all.
Definitely. Now, obviously, when you have an AI messing with code, security is a huge concern. What are the safeguards?
Well, both DevOps.com and TechCrunch really emphasize the environment it runs in. It's a secure, isolated cloud container.
Isolated how?
Critically, it has no internet access while it's working on a task.
Oh, okay. TechCrunch called it air-gapped, right? So it can't easily leak data or pull in malicious stuff.
Exactly. That significantly limits the attack surface. And it's also been specifically trained not to generate malicious code if asked.
Okay, so built-in refusal for harmful requests.
Right. DevOps.com mentioned that, plus internal policies and safety evaluations OpenAI has put in place, standard practice for responsible AI development, hopefully.
So thinking ahead, what's OpenAI's big vision here? How do they see this changing software development?
DevOps.com suggests they envision a future where these asynchronous multi-agent workflows are just normal, standard practice.
So developers juggling tasks, delegating work to multiple AI agents.
Kind of, and the idea of having both real-time pairing, like we have now with some tools, and this task delegation converge, maybe right inside your IDE.
It sounds transformative. Mitch Ashley from the Futrum Group, he had a quote in the DevOps.com piece.
What did he say?
Something about the focus shifting for engineers. Less on banging out lines of code, more on higher-level stuff.
Like architecture.
Yeah, like design, orchestrating the whole process, communication.
Yeah.
the bigger picture things.
That makes sense. If the AI handles more of the routine coding, human effort moves up the stack.
Right. And the agents themselves are expected to get more interactive. Maybe you can guide them mid-task, or they'll proactively give you updates.
A more dynamic partnership.
And DevOps.com also stressed the productivity boost, especially for smaller teams or even solo developers.
Giving them leverage they didn't have before.
Greg Brockman from OpenAI, Matthew Berman mentioned his take. Brockman talked about maybe even optimizing our code bases to work better with Codex.
Oh, interesting. Adapting our practices to suit the AI.
Yeah, leveraging its non-human strengths, like maybe its ability to meticulously follow complex rules or refactor huge amounts of code consistently. Following good engineering practices becomes even more important.
That's a fascinating thought. It's not just using a tool, it's potentially changing how we build software to better collaborate with AI.
Berman also flagged the development of Codex CLI. There's a local version, right?
Yeah, running on your own machine.
Yeah.
And a mini model, too. Probably lighter, faster, cheaper.
With ChatGPT sign-in coming for the CLI, making it easier to use.
And that Windsurf acquisition.
Right. The rumored $3 billion deal Berman and TechCrunch mentioned, that really signals OpenAI is serious about this space.
Buying a company focused on local AI coding suggests they see a future that combines both cloud power and local execution.
The best of both worlds, maybe. Speed and privacy locally, scale and power in the cloud.
And Berman raised a really interesting point. Maybe even programming languages themselves will evolve, or our code bases, to be more AI-friendly.
Whoa. Okay, that's looking further out, but it's a possibility. So let's talk performance and access. Who gets to use this right now?
Okay, so according to Berman, TechCrunch, and Andrej, it's currently rolled out for ChatGPT Pro, Team, and Enterprise users.
A Plus and Edu coming soon.
That's the plan, yeah. And that task completion time we mentioned, 1 to 30 minutes, seems to be the general expectation.
And benchmarks. Did Berman share any hard numbers?
He did. There's a thing called SweBench. It's like a standardized test for coding AI.
Okay.
And the verified results show Codex outperforming the older O3 model.
So definite improvement there.
And OpenAI's own internal test showed Codex 1 hitting 75% accuracy on their tasks. That was better than O3 high at 70%, and even a 4 mini highs at 67%.
So the specialized training paid off in their metrics.
Seems so. He also gave some pricing for the Codex mini model if you use the API directly.
Oh, yeah.
About 1.50 sever per million input tokens, $6 per million output tokens, and a big discount if you reuse prompts, something called prompt caching.
Okay, so costs to consider for heavy API users. And inevitably, people are comparing it to other tools, right? Like Cursor or Windsurf before the acquisition.
Naturally. It's entering a space where there are already some established players, so those comparisons are bound to happen. Highlights the competition.
Now, David Andrej's experience, they give some really good ground-level insights.
Yeah, his hands-on testing was super valuable. He showed the interface in ChatGPT.
Connecting his GitHub repo.
Right, setting up the environment. And OpenAI apparently gives you some suggested starter tasks.
Yeah, to help you get going. It gives a feel for that initial onboarding process.
And he had a positive experience early on, didn't he, with understanding code?
Yeah, he said Codex did a good job explaining the structure of their production code base accurately, which, you know, is a huge time saver.
Definitely. Getting up to speed on complex code quickly, that's a massive win, especially for new team members or just revisiting old code.
But it wasn't all perfect, right? You mentioned a couple of issues.
He did. Tried to fix a search ranking problem, but Codex made an assumption that led to a test failing. Something about a missing command, I think.
Okay, so it can misunderstand or miscontext sometimes.
Seems like it. And another task, changing a chat input color, failed a linter test. Possibly something weird with the environment set up, he thought.
So it highlights that it's still, you know, a developing tool, a research preview, essentially. It can make mistakes.
Exactly. Powerful, but not infallible. And environment setup can still trip things up.
But one really interesting thing Andrej dug into was this agents.md file.
Yeah, the system prompt file.
Yeah.
What was the deal with that?
It's basically a way to give Codex global rules, like always follow these coding standards or never touch this type of file. You set the overall behavior.
So you get some control over how it operates.
Yeah, a good amount of control. He even tried using a modified rules file from Cursor, another AI tool, to guide Codex.
That's pretty cool. Shows flexibility. You can tailor it to your project's specific needs.
And despite those couple of hiccups, he seemed pretty positive overall.
He did. He mentioned it successfully created pull requests for some tasks like clarifying that search logic, refactoring some code.
So it did complete useful work.
Yeah. And his general vibe was excitement. He felt it really boosted his productivity, saw potential to delegate a lot more tasks.
That's compelling feedback from someone using it on real code. He also mentioned the access plans, right? Pro, Team, Enterprise. And a tip about the team plan maybe being cost-effective.
Yeah, a practical tip there for people looking to try it out. His enthusiasm, even with the glitches, really speaks to the potential he saw.
Okay, so wrapping things up a bit, let's touch on the bigger picture.
Yeah.
The overall impact, any concerns floating around.
Well, there's no denying the buzz around these AI coding tools. TechCrunch and that "What is Codex" piece both noted the surge in popularity.
And the predictions, right? Some pretty bold claims about AI writing huge chunks of code in the future.
Yeah, those are definitely out there. And that quote from Jerry Tuerk at OpenAI.
The one about increased speed and reliability.
Right. It's led some people to say, okay, software engineers really need to upskill, adapt quickly. It's definitely fueling debate about the future role of developers.
Important conversations to have. How does the job change?
Exactly. But it's also crucial to keep perspective. TechCrunch reminded us, citing a Microsoft study, that these AI agents still make mistakes. They aren't perfect.
Good point. They're tools, powerful ones, but still tools with limitations.
And that air-gapped environment, great for security, but TechCrunch also pointed out it could limit usefulness if your task needs internet access, like calling an external API.
Okay, so there are trade-offs. Security versus flexibility in some cases.
Seems likely. But overall, the investment, like that big Windsurf acquisition, shows OpenAI is betting heavily on this direction.
Okay, so let's try and summarize the key takeaways from this deep dive on Codex.
All right. It's essentially a software engineering agent running in the cloud, powered by a specialized AI model, Codex 1.
And it goes way beyond just suggesting code. It can tackle whole tasks, multiple tasks at once, actually.
Right. In those secure, isolated environments, it learns from your code base, understands context.
And it can generate actual pull requests, proposing changes back to your project.
So the core ideas are, it's an agent, it enables asynchronous workflows, it learns from your code, and it has the potential to really shake up how software gets built.
So for you listening, especially if you're in the software world, it's worth thinking about, how could a tool like this fit into how you work?
Or even if you're just interested in tech's future, how might these kinds of AI agents change the whole landscape of creating software?
Which leads us to that final, maybe provocative thought to leave you with.
As these AI coding agents get smarter, more capable, how does the job of the human developer change? What skills become more important when the AI is handling more of the raw coding?
Yeah, what does it mean to be a software creator in the future, heavily augmented by AI? What are the new essential skills beyond just writing the code itself?
Something to definitely ponder.